Let's pray. Father, we come to you and thank you that you're in control, and I know that there are times in our lives, Lord, when we realize that, and you humble us and show us the frailty of life and also the frailty of our bodies. And Lord, we are weak, and we need you. Please forgive us of our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness, and show us if there be any evil way in our hearts, that we might be used for you. I just ask you would bless the families that are represented here, that you would encourage us and give us strength this day. Give us guidance and direction that we might honor these bodies as you call us to, and not walk in dishonor as this world teaches us. And Lord, I just ask that you would bless the endeavors of this class, that you would teach us how to handle and take care of our bodies as in regards to sports, and to look out and care for others as well. And we just thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, welcome to Walkersville Christian Family School's Sports Physiology and First Aid Clinic. This class is going to be split up into 2 semesters primarily. The first one is going to go over a little bit because of all the material that we have to cover right up front. There's a little bit more heavy material in the first part, which is the sports physiology, which goes over how your bodies are made and why, and how that is adapted to sports, and how we need to take care of our bodies, and why one person might be faster than another, why one person might be stronger than another, why one person might last 2 days nonstop and another one burns out in an hour. What are all the components of that? What's a fast twitch muscle fiber? What's a slow twitch muscle fiber? What's endurance? What's speed? What's the equation for power? Anybody know that one? You guys have been in my sports program long enough to probably already know that one. What's the equation for power? Look at a football player, right? What are the components when they hit when the hardest hits? What are the 2 components? Speed and strength. So strength times speed equals power. Okay, that's why you look at the people that hit the hardest are normally the linebackers and strong safeties, right? They're the lean and mean guys they're nothing but muscle and they can fly. And those are the guys that normally hit the hardest, because the big lineman might be big and strong, but they normally can't run a 4.4 40. Now the guys that can are the guys you need to watch out for, because they can kill you. But all of those things, and how do we want to train? How do we train so that we're powerful? Look at the first bodybuilders. Were they strong? And you have to be careful with words now. You think of the words I use. They were strong, yes. They were so strong, in fact, their muscles were so big they couldn't even comb their hair. They'd get to about here, and their bicep would block their arm, and their shoulder would block the rest of their arm, and their muscle was trained in a way that they couldn't even go past that, because they were so much muscle, so strong, that they couldn't even comb their hair, or you watch them go around like that. They didn't go around like this well, some of them probably did to be proud and boastful, but they went around like this because they couldn't even straighten their arms. They couldn't, because of the way they trained. And so that's why one of the books that we're going to use for this class is called Strength Training for Young Athletes. We're going to learn the proper ways of strength training, when to start using weights, when not to, and what is called sport-specific training. If you're in a sport or certain sports, you want to make sure that all of your training is geared toward the sport that you're playing. So if you're playing baseball, you want to make sure all of your training is stretching out your shoulder as far as possible. And when you do curls, like we talked about those bodybuilders that walked around like this, when you do curls, make sure you're going all the way down and all the way up. It's not how much weight you can do, it's doing it properly and the correct form. Okay, so we'll get into more specific things. We'll hit all of these areas, all of these things as we go throughout this class, but I just wanted to touch on a couple things that would pique your interest. We're going to learn all of those things and how, if we want to look at Well, I want to be a football player. I want to be a soccer player. I want to be a baseball player. Well, then how should I train? What type of strength training? What type of exercises should I do? That's why the major project in the first semester of this course is a 1 month exercise program for the sport of your choice, whatever sport that we're going to call you the coach, and you have to work out a program that you have 30 days before the start of your season. And so normally the first 2 weeks is mainly running and endurance, getting them in shape. Then the last 2 weeks is focused on sports specific. Well, the whole thing is sports specific, but last 2 weeks is focused more on drills and skills. We're not allowed to use a ball, so we can't. If it's soccer, we can't use a soccer ball. This is strength training before practice, and and you can only use each exercise 4 times. So if we're doing push-ups, you can only do push-ups 4 times in that 4-month or that 4-week program. So you're gonna scour books like this and scour books like this. This is the other book that we'll be using, and there are more recent updates of this, but Coach's Guide to Sport Physiology. The newer books are more expensive, but you can find this one on by Brian Sharkey. You can find this one on the internet for pretty cheap. Find it used. That's what I'll be lecturing from. Primarily, I'm going to be lecturing from this book. You're going to be reading this one as well, but we're going to be lecturing from it. I want you to read it because there's a lot of terminology in here that's going to blow you away, and you may not understand. So we'll talk about it when we come back after your reading. And strength training for young athletes. This is your primary reader. This is the one that you should be able to understand right away. It goes over a lot of the basics, where to start, a plan, planning for what you're trying to do. And that's the key, because normally when we hurt ourselves, we're not thinking, right? We react, or we do stupid things because we didn't think ahead of the consequences of it. And if you do that in strength training, if you do that in sports, you will get yourself hurt. And a lot of those consequences can be devastating and long term. And so we want to try to prevent that. The second semester, half of this course, is sport first aid. And in that half, I would get the syllabus out for that as this year progresses. I don't have the books in for that yet. They should be here shortly. But we'll also have 2 books for that. And that's going to be more hands-on. We're going to watch videos of how to handle emergency scenes, first aid, how to call 911, how to handle that type of situation in general. And then also we'll have a handbook that'll focus on sport type of emergencies and first aid, and we're going to have specific sessions on how to tape. You will have to know how to tape every single joint, because the test will be, I will pick 2, and you don't know which 2 I will pick. And you have to be able to pass that, to be able to know how to tape a shoulder, tape a hip. Ever taped a hip before? Tape a knee, ankle, wrist, and elbow. How to tape any joint in the body so that the person can play that sport. And we'll get into that. And then the other aspect is you have to, all of us will take the First Aid and CPR course by the AHA, American Heart Association. And then you have the ability to get the certification if you desire that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's kind of the second half. That's a lot more hands-on. We'll probably watch a couple videos. We'll definitely have some taping sessions where I'll go through every joint with you, show you how to do it. And we'll have some slides and slideshows to walk us through that as well. And also how to handle some scenes. So we might watch a slideshow of different injuries, because if it grosses you out looking at it on the screen, you're going to flip out in an emergency situation. And so we want to make sure that if you're going to be able to pass that part and handle an emergency, you have to be able to look at blood and not flip out, and look at a twisted arm and not go crazy. Because if you as an emergency responder go crazy, the person's going to flip out. And the number one goal is to keep them calm. And so you have to react calmly as well. And so we'll go through all that. And then obviously that whole day will be CPR and first aid training. That'll be a whole day that we'll have to carve out later. And also I'd like to get us to a gym as well to walk through various aspects of how to train properly on equipment when we're at the age where we can do strength training, weight training, and so we'll have some fun field trips and those kind of things too to make it fun. So, all right, well, I handed out sport physiology and first aid syllabus. For those watching this on video, your syllabus may be a little different, but please follow the syllabus. Basically, the readings and the things that are due are going to be very similar, just might be a different time frame on these. So if you pull it out, we're just going to read right through it, and if you have questions, now's the time to ask your questions, and then the rest of the day we'll get into just a basic lecture of some of the principles that we're going to be going over and covering in detail as we go through this course. Any questions so far? All right, well, let's take a look at the syllabus then. This is the part when I was in college that I always get a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach after reading all the work that was required of me. But since you guys are in sports, it should at least be fun, even though there's going to be some work. So I'll just read. This course is designed to teach the student basic physical fitness, exercise routines, muscle development of the body, sport safety, sport taping, first aid, and CPR. The course will enable the student to understand physical training, develop personal exercise routines and disciplines, understand muscular development of the human body, know how to treat minor sports injuries, know how to handle an emergency situation, know how to tape every major joint in the body, and gain certification in CPR and first aid through the AHA. Credit requirements. Credit will be granted for students, and this is a 1-credit course, who attend all the classes. Absences must be excused by the instructor. Complete all the assignments, tests, and quizzes when due according to the standards set by the instructor. Complete a 1-month workout project, which we talked about, which you will be applying what you learn in lectures and reading your textbooks. Pass the CPR and first aid certification. Well, pass the CPR and first aid course. It's up to you if you want to get the certification, so you need to speak with your parents about that, because you're not required to get the certification. You're required to take that portion of training. And pass a sport taping exam. Students taking the class for credit will be graded using the following criteria. So take a look at the grading scale. It's very clear. So at any point of the year, you should be able to figure out what grade you have. There will be 4 tests, what I call the midterm and final for the sports physiology, and a midterm and final for the first aid and CPR that we'll be doing as well. So that's 30% of our grade. The workout project is 15% of the grade. The taping exam is 15% of the grade. And the CPR and first aid class that we do, passing that, is 15% of the grade. And in that's about a 7-8 hour day. So I'm going to be paying attention the whole day, see how you do, see if you're paying attention. So that whole day is 15% of your grade. So if you're joking around and not paying attention, then that's going to affect your grade, because obviously in an emergency situation, you don't want someone joking around and not paying attention. You want them paying attention. And so that whole day will be a project. So make sure, and I'll tell you more about that when that day gets closer. So make sure that you're ready to go and had a good night's sleep and had a good breakfast on that day, because we always have fun. I'm not saying we're not going to have fun, but that day that we do that is a project. So pay attention to that. And then the other 25% of our grade comes upon attendance, class participation, homework, and quizzes. So that's how the grading breaks down. Now we're going to look real quickly at materials that are needed. You will need a notebook, to take notes. Bring a 3x5 card to every class from here on out for quizzes from your reading. And again, we'll look at the first half of this year. The books we need for sport physiology will be the strength training for young athletes again. And that is this book. It's by Kramer and Fleck. And then the second source is Coach's Guide to Sports Physiology, and that's by Brian Sharkey. The second half of the year will be the Sport First Aid. And that will be the American Red Cross First Aid Responding to Emergencies book. And again, they have newer versions of that like every 2 years. So the basic information is the same. Sometimes some of the CPR and some of the actual routines might be adjusted, how they do certain things. So the newer the better on that version. And then they have a little pamphlet called Sport Safety Training. A little pamphlet. It's 210 pages, but it's smaller. And we'll be using that one as well because that focuses on what this course is about, and it's sport safety and training for sport safety. So the first semester is going to be sports physiology. The information you will be responsible for will come from reading your textbooks, which you will be quizzed over every class notes. Each student is responsible to take notes in class, as I may be covering areas that are not in your textbook. Tests will cover class notes and important subjects from your reading. You will also complete a 1-month workout regimen covering all the major muscle groups with a purpose and goal page that will cover both strength and aerobic exercises for a specific sport. I didn't have that in there, but it's for a specific sport. So if you're picking soccer, then all the exercises and training that you do is geared toward playing soccer, and that's going to be part of the grading of that project. If I see a focus on shoulder exercises or those kind of things and you're preparing for soccer, you'll probably be downgraded. Now, you also have to remember, if I don't see any arm things, then I'm going to downgrade you, because what's the thing that we always need to remember, whatever sport we play, when we exercise and when we work out, we need to do what? If I just work out my right side and I don't work out my left side, what don't I have? I don't have balance, right? So we need to have balance. So yeah, even in soccer, we need to make sure we're looking at our upper body, making sure the upper body is getting strong too, because anyone seen the sprinters in the Olympics? Tell me what they look like. Do they look like bean poles, like the marathon runners? Or do they look like running backs in football? They don't have as much of this as I do, but they are strong all the way around, aren't they? They look like big, mean, lean running backs. I mean, they're strong. They don't have fat on them, but they got muscle. And they have muscle here as well as down in their legs. And so it's balance. You have balance in your training. But again, they're doing mostly running as far as their training and those kind of things as well. So you focus on the areas you need for your sport, but you also want to make sure you're maintaining balance in every aspect of what you're doing as well, because that's going to affect your endurance. If you don't have strength in the upper body, then you're not going to last as long on the soccer field, because you're winded, you're tiring, and that means your lungs aren't able to maintain what they need. Your heart's not able to maintain. And so all that stuff, and we're going to be learning all these principles and all the things that go into that as we go through this semester, and so we can use that knowledge to help us in the project that we do as well. A project explanation sheet will be handed out to explain the details. I have a full, just the explanation sheet is like 15 pages, so your project's going to be kind of large. But this is, and again, I just have some blanks on the top to kind of show you, here's the process of it. So you have warm-ups and cool-downs, and then your different exercises for every day, and then a bibliography page where I got these exercises from, Obviously, these two books I've got because there's a lot of sport-specific exercises and training things in these books. So there's a lot of information right here for you. Plus, also with the internet now, we can go and find a lot of things, but make sure we cite all of those things. So that will be handed out. Actually, it's in here, so we'll go through that. This will be handed out basically when we take our first test, like our midterm. So after the midterm, then you'll get this as well, because the second half of the year will be mostly lecturing on sport-specific exercises and those kind of things that are geared to help you with your project. So, and then the second semester is the sport first aid. If you follow along in your syllabus, the information, again, you'll be responsible for is the same thing. Your reading, class notes, lectures. Tests will come from class notes and your reading. With the first aid, you will also complete a taping test, which you will tape without help, 2 joints of the instructor's choice. And remember, if you tell me you don't want to do one, then you're probably going to do that one. So remember that as well. So you will complete the first aid and CPR training as offered by the American Heart Association and have the option to get your first aid and CPR certification. All right, class assignments. Today we're going to go over the goals and purpose, an intro to physical fitness and to sport physiology. Due next class, you will see we need to read chapters 1 and 2 of both Strength Training for Young Athletes and chapters 1 and 2 of the Coach's Guide to Sport Physiology. And as you go through basically every class, then it tells you, so then on October 9th, we're going to come back and I'm going to lecture on the things that you read. So I want you to be knowledgeable about things that I'm lecturing about so that we can interact. You can ask questions about your reading. What does this mean? What does that mean? So we'll lecture about that, and then at the end of every class, then you have your reading for the next thing. Then if you look down November 13th, it states that we'll lecture that day on energy systems and training. Then the next class, the work for the next class will be studying for your test, and you're also going to be handed out your workout project guideline at that class. So then on December 11th, we'll take a test, and then the reading, basically the chapters that we're going to be reading on the second half of this course is primarily focused on exercises and different exercises and training that are going to help you in the process of putting your project together. And if you look down at the bottom one, February 26th is our final exam and the project is due. So if you look at February 12th, we're going to have a project work day, and a review for the final. So basically from December 1st on, you should be working on your project. So that gives you about a full 3 months, December, January, and February, to get this project done. So that should be ample time. And we have a class dedicated to helping you that last 2 weeks before it's due to bring your projects in, and we'll work on them at that time. And for those watching watching this on video, that will be taped as well, so that you can see some of the things that we're working on. And for those on video, that might be a day where, if you have the ability to get in touch with me, where we can have a live day to be able to work on that with you, that would be a great opportunity, and we'll try to schedule that as part of your work. So that's the first half of this course in a nutshell. The second half is sport first aid and our CPR portion of it. And so then we'll get into a lot of the hands-on stuff. A lot of the how to handle emergency situation. We'll have one right here We'll also watch some videos. Red Cross has good videos on those kind of things. And we'll walk through the first aid handbook and sport taping. That'll be fun. And for those in sports, if you've noticed me in some of my coaching, taping ankles is, you do a lot of taping ankles. You need to do it right, because if you don't do it right, you can actually cause more injury or blisters, or a lot of uncomfortableness that isn't necessary if you do it right. So so that'll be the second half of the year, and so that we get a full get all the aspects of it. So any questions? No?
Alright. Do we have to have one project we're working on, or can we have
Different sports?
Yeah.
You got to pick one.
Can we only have one, or can
Yep.
we have several?
You have to pick one sport, because the whole purpose is that I need to see if you're doing sport-specific training.
So we have one specific.
Yes, exactly. So you're picking one sport, and and we can massage it a little bit, but it's designed for one sport, because you're basically going to take the role of a coach, and you're getting your athletes ready for the first game, and you have a month to do it, and you're taking them from basically decent shape. They might have been running a little bit, they're in okay shape. Now you got to get them ready for the first game, and you only have a month to do it. Okay, and you also have to specify what age this group is. Okay, because if you say I'm doing 7 and 8 year olds, and you've got them, doing bench presses and all kinds of other stuff in the gym, you're gonna flunk. You probably will flunk that project, because that'll be one of the things we go over. You don't hit the weight room until you're of an age that your body's able to handle that, and you can do a lot of exercises, a lot of strength training without weights. That is a whole lot better for you until your body is mature enough to be able to handle that type of training. And otherwise you can hurt yourself, hurt your growth plates, and actually stunt your growth and harm your body, because your muscles aren't developed to be able to handle that yet. And we're going to get into all that. So all the principles that we cover, I need to see in the project. We'll get into a little bit now. If I don't have any questions, check on what time it is real fast. My primary goal is to have about an hour lecture of class, and we'll have an hour and a half time slot to handle any questions, to handle any interaction, especially when we get our project handed out, handle any questions about that as we go. And excuse me. So if you get your notebooks out, we're going to go over just a couple things. Again, you're going to be reading most of this as we go, but there are a couple things that I wanted to go over in about the last 15 minutes that we have, so that we get everything off to a good start. We'll kind of go over the purpose of training in your mind. And it'll probably be different now than at the end of this course. What is the purpose of training? What's the purpose of doing an exercise program or training?
To be better at the sport you're doing.
To be better at the sport you're doing.
To do it well.
And to do it well. Okay, if you get yourself under a workout program and you're going to the gym 3 times a week, what's the purpose of that? To get stronger. Other people have different goals, right? But whatever your goals are, you got to set them up front so that you know if you're achieving them or not. If you're going to the gym to lose 10 pounds and to get stronger, then you're going to do exercises that are geared toward losing weight and toning. If you're going to the gym to get stronger, then you're actually not even going to focus on losing weight. Because what's stronger, muscle or fat? What's heavier? What's heavier? Muscle is heavier. So if you're going to the gym hoping to lose weight and you're doing all kinds of strength training things, you're going to gain weight. Now in the process, a few years ago when I was still working out, I did do that where I lost, I did lose about 25 pounds. I was well overweight. I did lose 25 pounds, but I gained a lot of muscle in the process too. So that kind of showed how out of shape I was. If you lose that much weight, and I was very, reaching the higher limits of my goals as far as bench press, chin-ups, dips, some of the other type of exercises that I was working on, and so that kind of showed the difference. If I wasn't so focused on gaining strength, I would have lost more weight, but I was focused on getting in shape and getting stronger. And so if your focus is on getting in shape and getting stronger, then you shouldn't set, I want to lose this much weight as a goal, because it's not in balance. If your focus is on losing weight, then you're going to do a lot of things to cut weight. And most of those are not going to get you a ton stronger, because you'll do 100 reps of things rather than 10 reps of higher weight. You'll do a lot of rubber band exercises. You do a lot of maybe kickboxing or aerobic type of things where I'm just doing a lot of fast movements, not a lot of weight, but I'm doing a lot of movements. It's going to tone my muscles, and it's going to burn calories and burn fat. But if you're trying to gain strength, you're going to do less reps, more weight, and it's called the overload principle, which we'll get into in a minute. What does anyone have an idea what the overload principle means?
Too much of a workout.
Okay, you're doing more than what you can handle. Okay, someone tell me in training for sports, if I'm playing soccer, do you train to just last 40 minutes or 45 minutes for the first half? What do you train for?
The whole game.
You train to play an hour and a half without taking a break. If you can play an hour and a half without taking a break, you can handle 45 minutes. Right? So you train beyond that. That's what overload means. Whether it's in endurance type of things like soccer, where I'm just running for an hour and a half nonstop, or if it's in more power sports like basketball, it's sprinting and running up and down and jumping. You need to be able to do that for a long period of time without stopping. And you go beyond what is needed in that specific area of sport, so that you can last that whole time. Because what happens if you go into overtime? Or what happens if you go into penalty shootouts and your legs are done? You look beyond and you plan to do more, and that's what overloading is. Now, if I say things more than once, you're going to see it again. Okay, so if you hear me say a statement more than once, you better be writing it down, okay, or at least remember it. If you don't write it down, you better have a good memory. All right, so when we get into some of these things, like this statement, sports consists of about 99% preparation, which I just talked about, and 1% performance. Sports consists of about 99% preparation and 1% performance. Because obviously, and you're preparing, you're performing.
Could you say the first part? 99%.
Sports consists of about 99% preparation and 1% performance. So you have to be prepared for what you are doing. If you're not prepared, then you're not going to perform well. And so that's what that means. You have to be prepared. If you're not prepared, you're not going to perform well. And you want to perform well, so you need to prepare for it. Just like anything you do, studying for a test, obviously in sports, if you're not prepared, you're not going to perform well. Because it's hard enough to perform well even if you're prepared, right? Whether how you're feeling that day, or you're nervous, or whatever the case might be, even if you're prepared, sometimes you still don't perform well, right? So, you definitely want to be prepared. All right, so this term physiology, what does physiology mean? Anybody have an idea? See, I have the book. You don't have the book yet, so you can't cheat. Anybody have an idea what physiology means? No? Physiology is the study of the body and how it functions. Physiology is the study of the body and how it functions. Yes, I said that twice.
Physical logic.
Physical logic. Yeah, there you go. Break the word down. Physiology, physical, is a study of the body and how it functions. And then we add the word sport to it. Sport physiology is the study of the immediate and long-term effects of training and sport participation on the body's physical systems. You don't need to know all those terms, but sport physiology is the study of immediate and long-term. So we're talking about immediate and long-term effects of training in a certain sport area, and how the body's physical systems can handle it. So the main thing you need to remember is physiology is the study of the body and how it functions. And sport physiology specifically is the study of the immediate and long-term effects of training and sport participation on the body's physical systems. Can you normally look at people and see the difference between someone that has been training for sports and for those that haven't? Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can see the guys that go to the gym. Oh, that guy works out. You can tell. Okay, bean pole, and they normally don't have a lot of extra weight, and they're normally filled out. They've got shoulders, and well, everyone has shoulders, but strong. So you can normally see that, or football players, you can normally tell. Just because someone's tall and big doesn't mean that they exercise and work out. But normally if you see someone that's fit and has tone to their arms, normally that means they're getting good exercise. And so some of the things you can see just by looking at somebody. So the thing we're going to get into now is talking about training. Okay, we're going to talk about training, and there are 10 principles of training that we're going to cover today. And we're going to get into these specifically more as we go through this time, because all 10 of these principles are going to be seen as we go, and all 10 of these principles need to be used in your project because they are the principles of training. If you don't use one of these, you're not going to be as prepared. You're not going to have as good of a training. So training is a slow, subtle process. It cannot be rushed. Training is a slow, subtle process. It cannot be rushed. What happens if we rush training?
Get hurt.
You get hurt. What happens if we rush training with a young athlete? Someone your all's age, in their teens.
Be like permanent damage.
permanent damage. You can hurt growth plates. If you break a growth plate, obviously your arm may not. If you break your wrist at the growth plate, which some of us have had close encounters with that, you can risk that arm not developing at the same rate as the other arm, and now you're imbalanced. You have a balance. I mean, one of the key things is balance. So remember, training is a slow, subtle process. It cannot be rushed. And then when you get in the area of my life, a little older, if I go right into a workout program that I was doing when I was younger and in better shape, what things could happen to me now? If an older person tries to rush into training, what happens?
Pull muscle to hurt yourself.
You could pull muscle, heart attack. You could do things that your body's not, if you do things too fast or your body's not used to doing. Well, look at all the injuries in like slow pitch softball. You have a picnic or a party or church league softball, and how many guys, and I've done it, pull a hamstring or something like that because they're not used to running that fast. They're not exercising on a regular basis, and then they go and do something full out and full force, and you get hurt. So remember, training, it takes time, it's slow, it's subtle, and it also is determined. It has a purpose, it has a vision, it has a plan. And if you don't have purpose with it, and what's the Bible say? Without vision, people perish. Without vision, people perish. Same thing in our training for sports or for exercise. Without vision, you can get hurt, and or you can do things that might hurt your body or not prepare you for the right thing that you're trying to get prepared for. There's a whole lot of different training if you're preparing for sprinting. If you're preparing for a 100-yard dash and you're doing training for a marathon, you're going to have issues. And some of the training, you might look at people and say as well, you have a body fit for speed. I don't have a body as fit for speed as I do endurance, because I have more slow twitch muscle fibers. I have high endurance. I can last a long time. I'm not in shape right now to run a marathon, but I would probably do better at running longer distances than I would shorter distances. Not to say when I was in better shape, I was decent in speed, but I wasn't the fastest guy out there. Now my brother was exactly opposite. He was the fastest guy out there, and he is still very quick. Now he burns out a little quicker than I do, and I can last a lot longer. Now, same thing, you have to remember, these are principles in training as well. If you are one that can go real fast, go quick, you're also going to wear out fast and wear out quick. But you're going to heal fast and heal quick as well. So there might be some that work out a half hour every day. I was different. I worked out 3 hours 3 times a week. Because I would just keep on going until I was done. And I would work out for a long period of time, but only 2 to 3 times a week, because it took me 2 days to heal. Because I went a long time, and then it took me a long time to heal. And so some things you can't change about your body. Now, you can adapt some things, but there's some things, if you look at it, you're born with the percentage of slow twitch muscle fibers that you have, and fast twitch muscle fibers that you have, and fat cells, and all these kind of things. Now, they might shrink or grow, but everyone has the same amount of fat cells that you were born with. Now, they might expand and grow or shrink, but there are some things that you cannot change. And that also points to who's in charge, right? Who's in charge? God is. He made us all with a specific purpose. And we have to come to a point where we thank Him and say, God, thank you for making me the way that you have. Now help me to serve you with the body that you've created and given me. And we can't change certain things about us. There are some of us that will never be a gymnast, okay, because we don't have that flexibility. And there are some that will never be able to run a marathon because they burn out too quickly. And there are some that will never be a track star. And that's just who we are. But there's so many things out there that we can excel in and do well in. And there's some that have a kind of are in the middle and have a balance and can do a lot of different things. And they can do a lot of things well, but maybe not perfect. And there's some that are skilled in one area only. And so we're all born in a way that some of those things can't be changed. Now, training, we can adapt. We can adapt our body to certain things. And we can train and adapt our muscles and adapt some things to where we can recoup some loss in some areas. But you also have to remember that's number one. You're born the way you are, and you can't change that. Now we can adapt certain things, and we can get stronger in areas, and we can try to get better in some areas, but we can never change who we are. So the other thing with training that we're going to talk about now, we kind of went over some of the purposes. Now we're going to hit the 10 principles of training. So this is a separate area. We're going to talk about the 10 principles of training. And training, you have to remember, is a systematic process. What do I mean by systematic? You look at systems. What is a system?
Systems in your body.
Well, there's systems in your body, but if you look at in a business world, what's a system?
Routine.
It's a routine. It's a step, maybe a step-by-step process that they have. You have to do it this way. It's a step-by-step process. Now, training can alter a little bit, but it's a step-by-step process. If you go from step 1 to 10, and if you leave the areas in the middle, you're going to be lacking something. That lack might cause injury. And so we want to be careful that training is a systematic process. It goes step by step. Okay? First principle that we'll cover is specificity. What do I mean by specificity? What's the word in that? Specificity. Specific. Okay? Training should be specific for each sport. Training should be specific for each sport. Specificity is viewed as one of the most important training principles. This is one of the most important training principles to remember. Specificity. So if your sport is very aerobic, what's aerobic mean? Here's another word for us. We'll get into a little bit later.
You talked about it earlier, kind of there's nothing with weights, just a lot of action, a lot of movement.
Good.
Kind of like there's like water aerobics where you do a lot of running in the water and you use power like
What most of the time when you do aerobics, is it a 10-minute thing or an hour-long thing? It's normally longer because aerobic, the word actually means aerobic is focused on endurance and long term. Okay, and it means with oxygen. Okay, it's actually aerobic is with oxygen. Anaerobic is fast and quick. Anaerobic defined means without oxygen. Okay, so that means if I'm doing things very, very fast, very, very quick, my body is not getting as much oxygen, right? and I'm able to still perform and do those things with a lack of oxygen. So that's why you can't keep doing very, very fast and quick things for a long period of time. You will have to slow down and stop at some point so your body can recoup that loss of oxygen. Basketball, they take timeouts every 2 minutes or so, because when you're sprinting back and forth like that, nonstop, boom, 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 your body can only do that so long before it says, that's enough. That's why you see people pass out after sprinting drills or things like that. Why do they pass out? Because you're out of oxygen. Your body says, to preserve your life, I have to shut you down. And boom, shut down it goes. So that it forces you to stop, boom, so that you can recoup the oxygen that you've lost. And that then we'll get into water and Gatorade. We'll get into all those, what those do, electrolytes, all that kind of stuff, how that affects the body, what systems. We also need to make sure we have oxygen and sugar and water and salt and all these kind of things. And we'll get into a lot of those later. But specificity is very, very important, that we're focusing on what type of exercise. Do I need aerobic workouts or anaerobic workouts? We always have a balance, but what is my sport focused on? And I need to do more of that focus area. The type or the mode of training that we're doing. Okay, in football, I have to be used to getting hit and hitting, right? So I'm going to do some more type of things that might bruise up my arms or bruise up my legs to be ready for that impact, to be ready for those things. And I'm getting specific to the type of things. That's why you see in workout programs for football players, they're hitting them with pads, or there might just be a guy standing there hitting them as they're running through so that they can get used to getting hit while they're running. Or some of them have where they're dragging a dummy as a running back, because he's going to have guys hanging on him and he still has to keep running. And so they have different type of things that are exactly for that sport, that you do training type of things that add some of those things in so that I'm ready for whatever happens. I've trained that way. I've trained to keep running a sprint with someone hanging around my legs, and I keep running. Or I train so that I'm running and I'm getting hit, and I keep running. And or as a defender, you dive and miss, and you hop back up and you sprint again. That's in their training. That's in their exercise programs. You see the guys sprinting and boom, hit the ground and pop back up, and boom, hit the ground and pop back, because that's what they do in their sport. In basketball, dive, get up. You dive on the ground to get a ball, you get up. In football, same way. Soccer, not quite as much, but the keeper does, most definitely. A goalie definitely needs to be able to dive and boom, get himself back up. And so you train that way. You add that into your training. Also, so we talked about specificity of energy systems, anaerobic or aerobic, specificity of the mode or type of training, and specificity of muscle groups and movement patterns. Baseball is a prime example of a movement pattern. You want to be able to do exercises, if I'm a pitcher, but anyone in baseball, that has my full range of motion. Full range of motion is very key. It's same thing in soccer. When I'm kicking, it's that full range of motion. I don't just stop right here. If I'm doing some type of leg exercise with rubber bands or something, I don't stop right here. I go all the way through and back, all the way through and back. Baseball is, prime example, because you want to make sure that I'm training for that full range of motion. So my shoulder is able to handle that, and my hips, everything that's involved goes through the full range of motion. And so that's the muscle groups. You ever gone to the batting cage and swung for half an hour? I have. Like the first time before softball season or whatever, I'll get in and swing. What area is moving that I normally don't do in my normal? My upper body, but right. I did that once. I went to the batting cage for an hour. I could barely get up the next day because everything right through here I'm like, oh, that hurts. I'm like walking to work like this. Because you normally don't do this, unless you have an exercise program where you're doing these type of things. But you normally don't, for an hour, do this. You don't see people doing this. That's why when I work with the little kids, why do my arms get tired after doing this for a minute? Because you normally don't walk around like this, right? But again, you train to do certain things. If you have a sport where you need to keep your arms up, okay, then you're going to train to be able to have stronger shoulders and those type of things. Sorry for hitting the mic. So that's specificity is one of the most important. So you're going to want to remember that. The other thing we'll talk about today is overload, and we mentioned it earlier. It's one of the other very important principles. Training must place a demand or overload, a demand on the body's system for improvement to occur. Okay? Because similar to a dump truck, that truck is used to carrying a regular load, right? Now, when the people planned that dump truck, what did they have to plan for?
A lot of weight, no matter what.
Certain amount, but not just to the top. They had to plan for a heaping overload. Because if they didn't plan for an overload, what would happen to the truck?
Breakdown.
It'd break. Okay? So in your planning for training, you train to overload so that athlete can handle anything. And you want him to go beyond. Because if you train for 45 minutes for soccer, you're barely going to get him to halftime. Okay? And what happens if there's extended play? What happens if there's injury timeouts? What happens if, there's overtime? He's going to be done. He's going to be shot. And so that's one of the very, very important things in training is overload. And you can overload in 3 different areas. You can overload in frequency, intensity, and duration. And we'll get specific here in just a second. You can overload in frequency, intensity, and duration. Duration we talked about, right? That one, we just talked about that with soccer. That's how long you do something. So what are the other 2? Frequency.
How much you would be doing certain things.
Okay, so like if I was going to the gym and I'm doing a bench press, if I do 3 sets of something as opposed to 2 sets, okay, I'm training a little different. Okay, if I do 3 sets of 6 reps, okay, I'm training a little different as if I would do 1 set of 100 reps. Okay, I'm training differently. The 1 set of 100 reps is going to be less weight, and I'm trying to get endurance, and I'm trying to tone. Okay, so that would be a whole lot different. If I'm doing only 6 reps of something, it's probably going to be a lot more weight, and I'm trying to build muscle. Now, when I'm trying to build muscle, when we say building muscle, what actually happens? Okay, if I take, and we normally start with, we definitely start, and that's why you're going to be reading this book. You start with very little weight so that you don't hurt yourself and you can get into processes. But if I was already through that first process and I'm benching 150 pounds, okay, and if I do that 6 times and then I stop, take a break, and then I do it 6 more times and I stop and take a break and I do it 6 more times, what am I training my body to do? not as much endurance. It's actually not as much endurance because I'm only doing 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take a break. I'm doing a heavy load 6 times, so that's, and I'm doing it 3 times. So that, what's that?
Intensity.
Now intensity is, we can add that in. The intensity is more of a pyramid approach, where I might be doing, I'm going to do 5 sets. My first set is 6 reps at 150 pounds, we'll say. My second set is 3 reps at 180 pounds, or whatever my line is. Normally doing steps of 10, so we'll say 160 pounds. My third set is only 1 rep, but that might be my max, 180 or whatever your max is. And then we always cool down. So in the pyramid approach, then you'll go back again. Your next set will be 3 at 170 or 160, and then your last would be 6 at your starting weight, 150. So you do a pyramid, but that hits intensity. You know, I'm going up to where that one in the middle is the most that I can do, and so you're hitting more intense, and that's just for bench weight training. But you might look at some kickboxing or aerobic type workouts as well, where there might be a lot of things where you're stretching and you're doing slow type of things, but then you get into intense parts where it's just boom, I'm doing real fast, real quick, and normally that's not going to last as long, but you can push it a little longer, a little more, a little longer, to where I keep stretching that up. And what you normally do, depending on what you're training for, again, if I'm training for endurance, if I'm doing those 3 sets, if I'm training for endurance, I probably at first keep increasing the reps. So maybe I started at 6 reps, 3 sets of 6 reps. If I'm training for endurance, then I'm going to add reps. So once I get a week to 2 weeks in a row of doing that, 3 sets of 6 reps at whatever weight I'm at, then I increase a rep or 2 until you get up to about 10. Then you can also increase your sets. So then you might but you're staying at the same weight because you're training for endurance. So then I get up to 5 sets of 10 reps, to where you're getting more, you're doing it for a longer period of time. If you're training for endurance, you're doing more for a longer period of time. If you're training for strength, you're going to be adding the weight. So if I started at 150, we'll say, you never start with that much, but you start with little, and then you find out what your starting weight should be. And there's a process for that, and we'll talk about that a little later. But if I do my 3 sets of 6 reps, and I do that for a 2-week period, then you add another 5 pounds and do that for a week. And then if you've handled that for a week, then add another 5 pounds. And so that's how you can keep adding, to where if I'm training for strength, and you want to make sure in all those exercises you're doing the full range of motion. If you see the guys that do this as they're benching, they're not doing themselves any good. They're going to be strong, but only right in this. Right in those 6 inches that they're moving. That's the only place they have strength. And so you want to make sure that you're overloading, and you can overload in frequency, which is how often you do it. Intensity is how fast you do it. And duration is how long of a period of time that you do it. And you want to remember this, and this is where we'll stop for today, is that the principles of specificity and overload are by far the most important to consider as you plan a fitness program. specificity, sport specific, and overload are by far the most important to consider as you plan a fitness program. And that's where we'll stop today. Your reading will cover the other 8 principles of training, and we'll cover those in detail next time. And Z, since you don't have the book yet, I will let you borrow mine until those other ones come in. Now, unfortunately, you're going to have all my highlights and stuff, so you should do well on the first quiz. If you don't, that's not my fault. I just okay. So that's where we will stop today. And if you pay attention to your syllabus, that will tell you specifically what is due next time. And for us, for this class, the next time that we meet will be October 9th. Again, right here at 10 o'clock. And so for that day, you need to read chapters 1 and 2 of Strength Training for Young Athletes. That's this book. And chapters 1 and 2 of the Coach's Guide to Sport Physiology. And that's this book. And I know that none of you are coaches right now, but you're taking this class so that you can learn not only for yourself, but how to lead others, how to help others in this process. So I want you to learn the process of what a coach does in setting exercise routines, because you can become your own coach as well when you're setting exercise programs, exercise routines. And so it's very important. These 2 books should help you immensely in this process. So chapters 1 and 2 of both these books for next time. Read those, because there will be a quiz when we come back, and I will know if you read or not. So then we'll finish. I started just talking about the 10 principles of training. What were those again?
Specificity and overload.
And those are the 2 most important. We'll get into the other 8 next time and cover those in detail. So we'll see you then. Thanks.